Hey peeps, this is Bret and I'm sitting here visiting with Jennifer Ashley Tepper. For those of you that don't know who Jennifer Ashley Tepper is, she's a producer, she's an author, she's a huge fan of the theater. If you don't know her series of books, how many do you have out now?
There's 3 out right now.
3 out of the Untold Stories of Broadway, which you will, it is filled with lots of goodies.
Thank you, Bret.
Oh my God.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to talk to you.
And I'm so happy to have you here because honestly, you are one of the most generous people I know of in this community.
Thank
and
you.
That's what, to me, one of the big things Broadway is about community.
Totally.
And how long ago did you start working for 54 Below?
I have been here for about 4 years now as the creative and programming director.
So you're constantly giving people, a lot of young people, a lot of new people, opportunities to be on a stage in New York City performing.
Yeah, I'm super passionate about, advocating for those writers and those performers and getting people on stage and getting new audiences for them.
How old were you when you realized you were going to commit your life to the theater? Do you remember?
Yes, my parents, both loved theater. No one in my family was in theater professionally, but they took me to see some touring productions in Florida, which I loved. I saw, Chorus Line and Fiddler when I was pretty young, like 8 or 9. But then my mom sent me to theater camp one summer and I got to do Annie. I played Drake, the butler.
Oh.
And that really did it.
You knew you were going to commit to theater, but when did you know you weren't going to commit to performing?
I really loved performing, growing up. I loved being part of a cast and a show and how joyful that was.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured out from a pretty young age that I was so fascinated by the history and I loved the idea of making shows happen. And I was always doing things even at an early age. It's interesting when you're young, you can't really direct the camp play, you can't produce the camp play, you can't be the publicist or the agent. So you, those little things that you find yourself doing when you get to be in a show kind of point some flags at maybe some other skills you might have. Mm-hmm. And I was always the one, at theater camp who would be everyone has to listen to this new cast recording or everyone has to learn about this show. And forcing my friends to learn obscure shows from the 70s when we were 11 years old. So I think that from that age on, studying liner notes and books, I was I'm gonna be involved in the history and the producing side of things.
What do you think the trick or what do you think you need to master being a producer?
Yeah, what the funny thing is about the word producing is it means so many different things, and it means a different thing on a Broadway show than it obviously does at 54 Below, than it might mean at your, community theater, than it might mean if you're line producing something off Broadway. There's all these different versions of producing, but at the root of it, it's really a lot about hiring the right people, managing the financial side of things, managing the creative side of things, and making sure that all 3 of those things kind of line up to make the show happen in the best way possible. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I find that, the needs of every project are pretty different. Sometimes I think producers, there's something you're really passionate about and you're we're gonna make this show happen. We are passionate about people seeing this show. And sometimes producers find a project and they're this is going to make a lot of money and also be something great that audiences are gonna enjoy, so that when this is a success, I can produce my weird show that I don't think is gonna make money and have both of those happen because of each other. So I think there's a lot of different priorities that producers have and different strategies to kind of how they make shows happen. When at the end of the day, you can't take money out of the equation, but it's also just one part of it. One of the interesting things about 54 Below, Feinstein's 54 Below, from a producing perspective, is it's basically producing 18 different shows every week, and essentially a large part of my job is negotiating people's contracts and determining, how much we can pay each artist, what each budget is going to look like when it's internally produced, how much we can charge for tickets, how many performances that person can warrant. The finances come into play so much, and so many of the decisions I'm making integrate the financial with the creative.
Mm-hmm. There's a mystery behind the finance part of it. How did you learn about that?
I learned a lot about it just from producing my own small concerts, cabarets, and then, working for producers and being involved in bigger Broadway budgets and, investment situations. When 54 Below opened 5 years ago, it was a lot of experimenting. It was still a lot of experimenting when I started 4 years ago. We are in a very popular location. We pay a lot for rent, and that's the beginning of the list of things we have in our overhead that we have to make enough money every night to pay for all of the expenses, from rent to staff to artists, restaurant. So what we figured out pretty soon was we needed a large amount of shows in order to make this work, which was not what they thought when they opened.
Yeah. Why is it important to you to share history?
I love New York City, and nothing makes me happier on a day-to-day basis than, walking by a building and being like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing SpongeBob there tonight at the Palace Theater, but I know that, like, Sweet Charity was there, and that, all these musicals that I love, Aida played there. It adds so much to my experience of New York, and it gives us this, like, sense of continuity with the city and with each other as artists. One of my favorite things to do in my book is to kind of ask people about what dressing room they were in, so that I can go, okay, like, Lin-Manuel Miranda is telling me a story about this Richard Rodgers dressing room, like, who was there in this show in the 70s? Oh, Joel Grey, like, amazing, and that connects those things in a very cool, like, physical way, and it, like, makes everything more fulfilling. Young people, I feel like more and more are getting into the history, and part of it I just credit to, like, the internet and the amount of access people have, and, when Bette Midler's in Hello Dolly, if Playbill has a feature that's like other Bette Midler shows, like, that young person might click on it. So I think in general the internet is helping give people a respect for history. It's my favorite thing when I speak to, like, students in other states, and they're like, we love 54 Below, and I'm like, oh, what show did you see there? And they're like, we haven't seen anything, we just have been watching YouTube videos. I'm like, that's amazing. And they're like, when I go to New York next time with my family, I want to see something there. I'm like, great. Obviously what they watch either has to do with new musical theater or historic musical theater, because that pretty much covers it.
Right.
So I really love that we're getting both things out there to, like, new audiences via doing it here and then also YouTube.
How would you tell someone to live their best Broadway life?
I think finding the things that you're most passionate about is so important, and a lot of times that might have a gateway drug of, like, this is a really popular musical I saw that I loved. There's literally nothing wrong if your favorite show is a Wicked or a Rent, both shows that I, like, freaking love. But then I think going a little bit deeper and thinking, what are the other musicals of Stephen Schwartz? Like, how am I interested in this? Do I love the costume design? Do I love the idea of, like, managing the box office? Like, finding those other corners of things that you're interested in, no matter, what your exposure is to theater, I think is how you live your best Broadway life.
I love that.
And find your tribe. Like, that's such an important thing. To find the people that love what you love and that respect what you love, and, like, make things with them and stick around with them.
Live your best Broadway life.